There is a country where the morning begins with the sound of a chair scraping against cobblestone, a terrace café opening its shutters to the first light over the Seine, where the aroma of fresh bread drifts through narrow medieval alleyways at dawn, and somewhere in the distance, church bells mark the hour in a language everyone understands. France does not announce itself. It does not need to. From the lantern-lit bridges of Paris to the lavender-scented plateaus of Provence, from the wave-battered cliffs of Brittany to the snow-draped peaks of the Alps, this is a country of extraordinary contrasts compressed into a single hexagon. Nearly 68 million people call this land home. They live in Renaissance chateaux, converted into family farms, in Haussmann-era apartments with wrought-iron balconies overlooking tree-lined boulevards, in stone cottages in villages so small the church steeple is the only landmark for miles. What does it actually mean to live here? Not to visit for a week with a guidebook and a camera, but to wake up here every morning, to raise children here, to grow old here. The postcard version of France, the one with the Eiffel Tower sparkling at midnight and the accordion music on the soundtrack, tells you nothing about the real rhythm of daily existence, about the woman in Lyon who has bought her bread from the same boulangerie for 40 years, about the fisherman in Marseille who still judges the weather by the shape of the clouds over the Mediterranean, about the winemaker in Burgundy who can taste the soil in his glass and tell you which side of the hill those grapes grew on. This is a journey across 10 chapters of life in France, from the geography that shaped its identity to the kitchens where its culture is preserved, from the challenges that test its communities to the quiet, powerful reasons people stay. We begin, as all French stories do, with the land itself. France is the largest country in Western Europe, stretching from the English Channel in the north to the warm Mediterranean shores in the south, from the Atlantic breakers of the west to the Alpine frontier in the east. Stand at the summit of Mont Blanc, at 4,809 meters, the highest point in the Alps and in all of Western Europe. On a clear day, the view from Chamonix stretches across 3 countries. The air is thin, cold, and startlingly pure. Below you, glaciers carve their slow, patient paths through ancient rock, a landscape that feels eternal and entirely indifferent to human clocks. Now travel 600 kilometers southwest. The Dordogne River winds lazily through limestone cliffs dotted with prehistoric caves. In the Vézère Valley, people were painting bison and horses on cave walls, while mammoths still walked this land. The Lascaux paintings are 17,000 years old, yet the river bends exactly as it did then. The oak forests that line its banks have watched empires rise and fall. France contains almost every European landscape within its borders. The volcanic peaks of the Massif Central rise from the heart of the country like a geological spine. The Camargue, south of Arles, is a sprawling wetland delta where white horses gallop through shallow salt marshes and pink flamingos wade in the brackish lagoons, a landscape that feels more African than European. And then there are the coasts, more than 3,000 kilometers of coastline in total. The granite cliffs of Brittany, where lighthouses stand sentinel against Atlantic storms that can turn the sea from glass to fury in less than an hour. The long sandy beaches of the lands in the southwest stretching for over 100 uninterrupted kilometers, the longest continuous dune system in Europe, crowned by the Dune du Pilat, towering over 100 meters above the sea. France is shaped like a hexagon. The French call it le hexagone, with a kind of quiet affection. but no single description can capture the variety of its environment. In a single day, you could ski in the Alps, drive through the lavender fields of Provence, and end the evening with your feet in the warm waters of the Mediterranean at Nice. This geographic diversity is not just scenery, it is the foundation of everything that follows. The food people eat, the houses they build, the work they do, the rhythms of their days. The land shapes the life. And in France, perhaps more than anywhere else in Europe, the people have never forgotten it. The French day begins early, but unfolds slowly. There is a deliberate, almost ceremonial quality to its rhythm, a quiet resistance to the rush that defines so much of modern life. In Lyon, the gastronomic capital of France, a baker named Stéphane has been arriving at his boulangerie at 4 in the morning for 32 years. By the time the first customers push open the door at 7, the baguettes are cooling on wire racks. Their crusts are perfect golden brown, the steam still rising in the cold morning air. The first customer buys the same thing every day. A tradition, a bread made with nothing but flour, water, salt, and yeast. A recipe protected by French law. Stéphane wraps it in paper and hands it across the counter. No receipt, no small talk, just the small, sacred rituals of daily life. Morning unfolds across the country like a wave. In Paris, the metro platforms fill with commuters who navigate the underground with the practiced efficiency of people who have spent a lifetime in tunnels. In Toulouse, the outdoor markets open under striped awnings, vendors arranging pyramids of tomatoes, wheels of cheese sweating in the morning warmth, olives glistening in barrels of brine. The French lunch break is a protected institution. Offices empty, shops close their shutters. For 90 minutes, sometimes 2 hours, the country stops. In Bordeaux, colleagues gather at corner bistros for the plat du jour, perhaps a duck confit with crispy skin, served with potatoes roasted in the fat. Wine is not a luxury here. It is a condiment, a conversation partner, a quiet accomplice to the meal. Afternoon in France has a different texture. In the villages of Provence, the hours between 2 and 4 are hushed. Shutters close against the Mediterranean sun. The cicadas fall silent. This is the sacred pause, la pause, when even the dogs stop barking, and the only sound is the distant hum of a tractor or the occasional cooing of pigeons under the eaves. Evenings belong to the family. In Strasbourg, near the German border, dinner is served at 7, earlier than in the south, where in Nice the first course might not arrive until 8:30. The table is set properly, plates, glasses, knives and forks arranged with precision. The television is off. The meal is not rushed. This rhythm, early rise, slow morning, proper lunch, afternoon pause, family dinner, is not a luxury for the French. It is a value system encoded in daily practice. It says, life is meant to be lived, not merely processed. And in a world that increasingly rewards speed, France remains stubbornly committed to slowness. To understand how the French live, you have to understand where they live. And in France, a home is never just a building. It is a statement about heritage, about region, about belonging. In the Alsatian village of Colmar, half-timbered houses, painted in pastel pinks, blues, and yellows, lean slightly toward each other across cobblestone streets. These are not recreations built for tourists. Families have lived in these homes for generations. The ground floor might house a florist or a wine shop, and upstairs, behind flower boxes spilling with geraniums, 3 generations share meals around a heavy wooden table that has survived 2 world wars. Travel south to Provence, and the architecture transforms completely. The traditional mas, a stone farmhouse with thick walls, small windows, and a terracotta-tiled roof, was built to keep the summer heat at bay, long before air conditioning existed. The walls of a mas in the Luberon region near Gordes are sometimes a meter thick. Inside, the rooms are cool even in August. Cypress trees stand like sentinels along the driveway, and somewhere in the garden, hidden from the road, there is almost certainly a swimming pool surrounded by lavender bushes. In Paris, space is the ultimate luxury. The classic Haussmann apartment, named after Baron Haussmann, who transformed Paris in the 19th century, follows a strict floor plan. The pièce de réception, the grand living room, faces the street with floor-to-ceiling windows and wrought-iron balconies. The kitchen, historically, was at the back, close to the servants' entrance. Today, those apartments in the 7th arrondissement, with views of the Eiffel Tower from the balcony, can sell for over 20,000 euros per square meter. Yet the kitchens remain small by modern standards. French priorities are different. French families tend to be close-knit and geographically rooted. It is not unusual for 3 generations to live within 20 kilometers of each other. Grandparents in the village where they were born, their children in the nearest town, grandchildren returning on weekends to pick apples from the same trees their great-grandparents planted. In the countryside south of Dijon, a family might gather every Sunday for a lunch that stretches from noon until 4 in the afternoon. 6 courses, multiple wines, heated debates about politics, and stories retold so often they have become family mythology. There is a French word that captures this: terroir. It is most often used to describe wine. The unique combination of soil, climate, and tradition that gives a Burgundy its character, a Champagne its identity. But the concept runs deeper. In France, people are shaped by their terroir as much as the grapes are. A Norman is not a Provençal. A Breton is not an Alsatian. The house you live in, the food you eat, the accent you speak with. These are not accidents of geography. They are identity. No conversation about life in France can avoid its most famous export, because food in France is not fuel. It is philosophy, it is history, it is how a nation understands itself. Start in Burgundy, in the town of Beaune, surrounded by some of the most famous vineyards on earth. The hillsides here, the côtes, have been planted with Pinot Noir and Chardonnay since the monks of the Middle Ages first mapped the subtle variations in soil and sun exposure. A Burgundian winemaker can walk through his vines and taste the difference between 2 rows separated by barely 20 meters. He will talk about minerality, about the limestone in the soil, about the particular angle at which the afternoon light hits this particular slope. This is not pretension. This is 8 centuries of accumulated knowledge passed from father to son, from mother to daughter. In Marseille, the food tells a different story. This is a port city, founded by Greek traders 26 centuries ago, and its cuisine is a map of every culture that has passed through. Bouillabaisse, the famous fish stew, began as a poor fisherman's meal, made from the catch that was too bony or too ugly to sell. Today, it is served in restaurants overlooking the Vieux Port. The broth, rich with saffron and orange peel, the fish brought to the table whole before being filleted into bowls. But the soul of the dish remains working class. It tastes of the sea, of salt spray, of hard days on the water. The French relationship with food is structured. It follows rules. Breakfast is small, a tartine of bread with butter and jam, a bowl of café au lait. Lunch is the main meal. Dinner, except on special occasions, is lighter. Cheese comes before dessert, never after. The cheese course is not just a tradition, it is a moment of reflection, a pause between the savory and the sweet. In a fromagerie in the 7th arrondissement of Paris, the owner will ask you what you are eating for dinner before he recommends a cheese. He needs to know the sequence. Everything must be in its proper order. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about French food culture is not the Michelin-starred restaurants or the legendary wines. It is the everyday, the way a construction worker in Nantes will spend his lunch hour sitting at a proper table, knife and fork in hand, eating a 3-course meal. The way school children are served meals that include a starter, a main course, a cheese plate, and a dessert, and are taught to eat them in that order slowly. The way the market in Sarlat-la-Canéda, deep in the Dordogne, has been held in the same square on the same days for over 500 years, selling the same walnuts, the same duck confit, the same goat cheese rolled in ash. In France, food is the thread that connects past to present, region to region, family to family, and it is taken seriously because it is understood at a deep cultural level that how you eat is a reflection of how you live. France has the world's 7th largest economy. It is a global leader in aerospace, luxury goods, nuclear energy, and agriculture. But its relationship with work is complicated, defined by a tension between ambition and the fierce protection of life outside the office. In Toulouse, the aerospace capital of Europe, engineers at Airbus assemble the wings of the A350 in hangars so vast they have their own microclimate. Clouds have been known to form near the ceiling. The precision required is staggering. A single rivet out of place can mean catastrophe at 35,000 feet. These are highly skilled jobs, and the pride in the work is palpable. Outside the factory gates, the city's bars and restaurants fill every evening with workers who have spent their day building machines that defy gravity. Yet France's most iconic export is not an aircraft, it is luxe. The fashion houses of Paris, the names embroidered on handbags that cost more than a car, employ tens of thousands of artisans across the country. In the workshop district of the 9th arrondissement, leather workers and embroiderers practice skills that have barely changed in a century. A single Hermes bag requires up to 48 hours of hand-stitching by a single artisan. The demand far exceeds the supply. Waiting lists can stretch for years, and yet the pace of production never accelerates. The artisans work at the speed of quality, not the speed of commerce. The legal working week in France is 35 hours, a policy introduced in the year 2000 that still baffles outsiders. The reality is more nuanced. Many professionals work longer hours, but the principle endures. Work is a part of life, not its entirety. French workers are entitled to 5 weeks of paid holiday per year, and they take every single day. In August, the entire country seems to shut down. Paris empties. Offices close. Finding an open bakery in certain neighborhoods becomes a genuine challenge. France's agricultural sector remains one of the most powerful in Europe. The plains of the Beauce, south of Paris, known as the Granary of France, produce wheat that becomes baguettes on tables from Tokyo to New York. In Normandy, dairy farmers produce camembert and pont l'évêque, according to AOC regulations, appellation d'origine contrôlée, that dictate everything from the breed of cow to the minimum aging time. A camembert that does not meet these standards cannot legally call itself camembert. The French economy is a paradox. It has produced some of the world's most ruthless capitalists, the owners of luxury empires, the titans of industry. Yet it maintains a social safety net that is among the most generous on earth. Healthcare is universal. Education through university is nearly free. Workers have rights that their counterparts in London or New York can only envy. The trade-off is high taxation and a certain structural rigidity. But for the majority of people living here, it is a trade-off worth making. France is often described as a secular country, and it is by law. The separation of church and state, laïcité, was codified in 1905 and has shaped French identity ever since. But if you want to understand how the French socialize, you still need to look at the calendar, because beneath the secular surface, the rhythms of French community life are still marked by traditions that predate the Republic itself. In Brittany, in the far northwest, the tradition of the fête noz, the night festival, stretches back centuries. Originally a gathering where farmers would celebrate the end of the harvest by dancing in barns to the sound of bagpipes and bombards, it has evolved into something both ancient and modern. In the town of Quimper, on a summer evening, hundreds of people, teenagers and grandparents, locals and visitors, link arms and move in circles across the cobblestones. The dances are precise, the steps passed down through generations, and for a few hours, under the stars, the Breton language and the Breton identity, suppressed for much of the 20th century, reassert themselves with quiet, stubborn joy. Further south, in Nice, Carnival is a different kind of tradition entirely. For 2 weeks every February, the city erupts into a riot of color and noise. Vast papier-mâché figures parade down the Promenade des Anglais, satirizing politicians and celebrities with the sharp, unforgiving humor that has always characterized French satire. Flower battles, bataille de fleurs, fill the streets with the scent of mimosa and roses. This is the Mediterranean spirit, exuberant, theatrical, life-affirming. But the most important French tradition may be the simplest one, the village fête. In thousands of communes across the country, in the Dordogne village of La Roque-Gageac, built into a cliff face above the river, or in the hilltop villages of the Luberon, summer means the annual celebration. Tables are set out under plane trees. The mayor makes a speech, someone plays an accordion, children chase each other between the legs of adults. There is wine from the cooperative, and sausages from the local butcher, and a cake baked by the woman who runs the post office. Nothing spectacular happens, and yet everything that matters happens. The French also have a deep and enduring tradition of public debate. The café is not just a place to drink coffee, it is a place to argue. In the literary cafés of Saint-Germain-des-Prés in Paris, Les Deux Magots, Café de Flore, intellectuals once debated existentialism over espresso. Today, in cafés across the country, the arguments are more likely to be about football, or immigration, or the price of bread. But the intensity remains. The French believe that to live in society is to be engaged with it, and that engagement often means disagreement, loudly expressed over a small table and a tiny cup of coffee. France is not a postcard, and life here, for all its richness, comes with genuine struggles. There is a phrase that haunts the national conversation: la diagonale du vide, the empty diagonal. It describes a band of territory stretching from the Ardennes in the northeast to the Pyrenees in the southwest, where population density drops dramatically. Villages in the Creuse or the Haute-Vienne have lost their schools, their post offices, their cafés. Young people leave for the cities, to Toulouse, to Bordeaux, to Paris, and often do not return. In some hamlets in the Limousin, the average age is over 60. The church bells still ring, but fewer and fewer people are there to hear them. Meanwhile, in the suburbs, the banlieues that ring France's major cities, a different kind of struggle unfolds. In Clichy-sous-Bois, northeast of Paris, the tower blocks built in the 1960s and 1970s to house immigrant workers and their families have become symbols of exclusion. Unemployment is high. Services are stretched. The distance between these neighborhoods and the glittering center of Paris is barely 15 kilometers by road, but it can feel like a different country. This is where France confronts its most difficult questions about integration, about opportunity, about what it means to be French in a society that has not always made room for all its citizens. The cost of living, particularly in major cities, has become an increasingly urgent concern. In Paris, a studio apartment of 25 square meters can rent for over €1,000 a month. Young professionals earn decent salaries and still find themselves sharing apartments into their 30s. In the countryside, the challenge is different. Fuel costs to reach work, declining public transport, the slow erosion of local services. French farmers face their own unique pressures. In the agricultural heartlands of the Loire Valley and Normandy, the price of milk often falls below the cost of producing it. Bureaucratic regulations pile up, hundreds of pages of EU directives dictating everything from pesticide use to the curvature of cucumbers. In recent years, farmer protests have blocked highways and motorways across the country. The message is clear: the people who feed France feel abandoned by the systems that govern it. And then there is the weather of discontent. The periodic strikes and demonstrations that have become so woven into French political life that they are almost seasonal. Transport workers, teachers, students, pensioners. When the French feel unheard, they take to the streets. It is messy. It is disruptive. It is also, in a strange way, an expression of democratic vitality, a reminder that the social contract is not a static document, but a living negotiation. These challenges are real. They test the national character, and yet for the overwhelming majority of people who live in France, they are not the whole story. France exists in a permanent state of negotiation between its past and its future. In the Loire Valley, the chateaux of Chenonceau and Chambord rise from the mist like Renaissance dreams made stone. These were the pleasure palaces of kings, built when France was the most powerful nation in Europe. Today, they are tourist attractions, meticulously preserved. But look closer. The village of Amboise, in the shadow of the royal chateau where Leonardo da Vinci spent his final years, is not a museum. On Tuesday mornings, the farmers' market fills the main square. Teenagers gather outside the lycée with smartphones in hand, scrolling through Instagram. An electric car charges silently beside a 16th-century fountain. This coexistence of old and new is not always harmonious. The French reverence for tradition can tip into resistance to change. The same country that built the TGV, trains that glide between Paris and Lyon at 300 kilometers per hour, also requires bakeries to register with the government before they can take a holiday to ensure bread remains available in every commune. The same nation that leads Europe in nuclear energy innovation still has villages where the weekly ritual of the hunt, la chasse, is guarded with near religious fervor. In the technology sector, France is undergoing something of a renaissance. Station F In Paris is the largest startup campus in the world, a converted railway depot now housing over 1,000 young companies. French engineers are building artificial intelligence systems, fintech platforms, and biotechnology breakthroughs. The country that once dismissed entrepreneurship as an Anglo-Saxon obsession is now producing unicorns at an accelerating rate. A generation of young French professionals who left for London and Silicon Valley are now coming home, drawn back by a quality of life that no stock option package can replicate. But the tension persists. In the small towns of the Ardèche and the Aveyron, traditional stone houses are being bought by Parisians seeking escape from urban pressure, driving up property prices, and some locals say, diluting the authentic character of rural life. The newcomers plant lavender, renovate the barns, and open artisanal cheese shops. The old-timers watch with a mixture of welcome and wariness. The same story plays out from the Pyrenees to the Ardennes. A rural France that is quietly dying, and a new France that is slowly, hesitantly being born. France is not choosing between tradition and modernity. It is attempting the far more difficult task of holding both at once. A nation that still takes 2 hours for lunch and also builds the world's most advanced nuclear reactors. That protects its language with a government body called the Académie Française and also produces some of the most innovative hip-hop in Europe. That fights fiercely over immigration policy and also celebrates the multicultural reality of its cities. The balance is uneasy. It may never be resolved, but the attempt itself, the insistence that progress need not mean erasing the past, is perhaps the most French thing of all. So why do people stay? Why, given the taxes, the bureaucracy, the periodic chaos of strikes and protests, given the long winters in the north and the suffocating summers in the south, do nearly 68 million people continue to call this country home? The answer begins in Provence, in the village of Roussillon, perched on a ridge of ochre cliffs that turn blood red at sunset. A woman in her 70s waters the geraniums on her terrace. She has lived in this house for 52 years. Her children have moved to Lyon, to Paris, to London. She stays because the light is different here, softer somehow, filtered through centuries of limestone dust. She stays because the baker remembers her name, and the butcher saves her the best cut of lamb on Thursdays. She stays because when she walks to the village square at 6 in the evening, the plane trees cast long shadows across the gravel, and someone, always someone, raises a hand in greeting. This is the art of living that the French call l'art de vivre. It is not a luxury product. It is not something you can buy or import. It is woven from small things: the quality of the bread, the rhythm of the meal, the expectation that a conversation will last as long as it needs to. The afternoon spent doing nothing in particular, on purpose. In France, life is not something to be optimized or hacked. It is something to be savored. The French have made an art form out of the everyday, out of the market visit, the café terrace, the long lunch under a canopy of leaves. They have built a society that, for all its imperfections, still treats pleasure as a right rather than a reward. And then there is the land. The French relationship with their territory is almost physical, a kind of rootedness that is difficult to explain to people from younger, more mobile nations. The Burgundian winemaker, who works the same vines his grandfather worked. The Breton fisherman, who navigates the same currents. The Parisian, whose family has lived in the same arrondissement since Napoleon was emperor. There is a word for this too: enracinement, rootedness. It is not nostalgia. It is something deeper and more stubborn. It is the conviction that place matters, that where you are from shapes who you are, and that leaving, even for a better salary or a bigger apartment, means losing something irreplaceable. People stay in France because France stays with them. The smell of baking bread on a winter morning in Strasbourg, the sound of waves against the cliffs of Étretat in Normandy, the feel of warm stone under bare feet on a summer evening in the Luberon. The particular quality of silence that descends on a village at 2 in the afternoon when the shutters close and the whole world seems to pause for breath. These are not grand things. They are small, quiet, daily things. But they add up, over a lifetime, to something that feels worth protecting, worth staying for. If you could wake up tomorrow in any corner of France, a Parisian apartment, a stone farmhouse in Provence, a cottage on the Breton coast, where would you choose? One word in the comments below.